Hi, this is Becky with Icing on Top Becky's Cakes, and today I am going to show you how to bake a cake using a doctored cake mix method. And see, I have all different kinds of brands here, and sometimes people don't have time to bake from scratch. Sometimes baking from scratch intimidates someone, so I'm going to show you how to bake a cake. See, on the back, each of these have the ingredients here, and we're just going to doctor it just a little bit. You can doctor it a lot when you get more comfortable, but I'm just going to show you just the basics, how to get it started, and how to know when your cake is done, how to keep it nice and level at the end so that you can stack cakes and make a real professional looking cake. And so I'm going to use 2 of these today because I am going to make 3 8-inch cakes. And so for 3 8-inch cakes, you need 2 cake mix boxes. But if you're only just doing 1 or just 2 cakes, then you probably wouldn't need 2 of these mixes for it. But anyway, look, I'm going to use the Pillsbury one here. And so they have 2 different ones, one for a egg white recipe and one for the whole egg. Now I like the whole egg because it tastes a little richer. So we're going to use this recipe, but we're going to doctor it up. For the oil, I'm still going to use oil because I think it makes a cake more moist, but a lot of people swap out the oil for the same amount of butter. And then we're going to swap out the water for milk. And we're going to add 1 extra egg than is required on the back of the box. And that's really the most basic way of doing it. But first, I'll show you how to prepare your pans so that it comes out cleanly every time. So I'm going to take my 8-inch pan and I put a little bit of shortening in there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to rub the shortening all around. And we want to make sure when we rub the shortening around that there's no shiny parts of the pan that you can see once you're done rubbing it around. You want to make sure all the shiny parts are covered because whatever is shiny, that's what your cake's going to stick to. So you want to make sure that you rub it in really good so that there's no shiny parts showing when you're done. And just rub it in good, and if there's excess shortening, just scrape it off and then you can get rid of that. And then after we're done with this, we're going to add a couple tablespoons of flour and shake that around, and that'll also reveal to us if we had the shortening covered enough, and also the flour will help keep it from sticking. So three cake pans here, all covered in shortening, and you don't see any of like the shiny parts. It should all be pretty covered. And we're gonna go ahead and get that flour, just using regular all-purpose flour here. Just gonna stick a couple tablespoons of that in there. And what we're gonna do is we're just gonna shake this around. We don't want extra globs of flour anywhere, but I'm gonna put it all in my first pan, and then from my first pan, I can dump the extras into my bottom pan. So I gotta make sure the bottom's covered and all the sides. So I just turn it around, make sure I get the sides here, get it all covered, and then I'm going to beat that into the pan below it. Beat it out of there so that there's no extra flour. Bang, bang, there we go. No extra flour, no shiny spots. That one's good to go, and no cake is gonna stick to that. And then just repeat that for the next pans, and then we're gonna preheat our oven. And I like to preheat my oven to 325. That makes sure that the sides don't burn. And so there's the rest of my pans all done, and I am gonna start on my cake mixes. Now I put in 8 eggs because I'm doubling that. So we'll add the extra egg, so that would be 4 eggs if it's 1, 8 if it's 2, and we're gonna beat the eggs first, and then we're gonna add the liquid measurements. So since I choose to add oil, we're gonna add double the oil because we have 2 cake mix boxes. So I'm gonna go ahead and double the oil and pour that in. And then after I add the oil, I'm gonna add milk instead of the water. So I'm gonna add 2 cups of milk instead of the 2 cups of water. Again, because we're doubling it, but you guys can just do the 1 cake box mix if you want, but just swap out the water for the milk here. And then we're gonna mix that really good. And then after we get the liquids mixed really good, that's when we're going to add the cake mix. And the reason I do the liquids first is because you don't want to over mix your cake batter, because sometimes it won't rise as well or it'll give you other problems. if you're over mixing your cake batter. It just doesn't turn out as well. So that's why you don't want to mix it more than you have to. So mix all your liquids well, that way you know those are fully mixed. And then go ahead and add your dry ingredients here, which would be everything in the box. So that makes it really easy. And I'm using a sifter to sift all this out, because otherwise, if you don't use the sifter, you're gonna see all these, you can even see the the clumps of powder there, and see that's gonna make lumps in your batter, and then that's gonna make you wanna mix it longer if you got lumps in your batter, because you wanna try to get the lumps out so that you don't have a lumpy cake or certain dry patches in your cake. So that's why I always sift these cake mixes. And it's really not hard. I pour in half, give it a good shake, and then pour in the other half and give it another good shake. And since I'm doubling it, we can do it twice. Yeah. And then towards the end, you might want to use a spoon just to smash out those few little clumps that are left over to get them through the strainer, and then you're ready to mix that together. And so we just mix it for a couple minutes until everything is wet and everything is mixed well together. But again, don't over mix it, because you don't want it like sink in or something on you. So we want it to turn out the best it can. So we're just gonna mix it until everything is fully incorporated. And then we'll just scrape down the sides with our spatula, and that'll make sure that we get anything that isn't mixed in with our spatula. And everything will be fully incorporated and ready to go in the pans. Okay, so here are my 3 pans, and I'm gonna fill them all just below the halfway point. So I just eyeball it at this point. And you don't want it more than the halfway point, because then it's gonna take longer to get done and be drier on the outside, and it just not turn out as well, overflow, you might have a mess. So yeah, just below the halfway point will give you a nice cake. So we're just filling them all, and I'll just scrape it with my spatula, and those 2 cake box mixes are just about perfect for these 3 8-inch pans. But you can do any size you want and still cook it at 325. But if it's a smaller pan, you're gonna check it sooner. If it's a larger pan, it'll probably need to be in there longer. So I always check my pans at about 30 minutes for this size. For an 8-inch, I would check them, and I'll show you how to check them to see if they're done. If they're not done, let them keep going. You don't want to check them before the 20-minute mark, or otherwise they might sink in the middle. So don't even open your oven until it gets to the 20-minute mark for cakes. So here they go in the oven, all 3 fit. That was great. Now I'm gonna check it. It's been about 30 minutes, so let's check it. Is it done? No, see this? It's got a little bit of wetness there. And so I put it in for 2 more minutes, because it looked like it was almost done. Let's take it out, let's try this again, and look, we just have crumbs, and we know it's done. And also you can tell around the sides it's pulling away from the pan. That's also another clue that it's done. And so there's one that came out beautifully. Let me show you how easily this comes out. So this is right out of the oven. There's our cake. I'm gonna flip it over. Boom, like that, not even a struggle. That is what we did all the shortening and flour work for. Flipped right out of there. Now, if you're scared to just flip it out like that, you can place your cooling rack right on top of the cake and put something like a towel or something underneath, and then you can flip it like that. That way you're not going to accidentally crack your cake or something. Especially with larger cakes, it's probably a better idea than to flip it out like my first one. So there we go, we have our 3 cakes. Let me show you how I level them. I've let them cool for about 15 minutes. I have a piece of wax paper down here. I flipped it over onto the piece of wax paper, and now I'm gonna get out my cake leveler. Now these you can get on Amazon. They are not expensive at all, and they will save you a lot of hassle to try to get all the same size. I also have a serrated knife. The serrated knife just helps get it going. You see all these notches on the side? You can adjust it however high you want it. And I like it to be right below that line all around. And sometimes it's a little higher, a little lower on certain parts of the cake. So that's why I go around and check that this is gonna fall right below that line. get it started with my serrated knife, and then it easily wiggles through. It is wonderful, and that's why I like to level it when it's still warm. Also, the reason why I like to level it when it's still warm is because I like to wrap it in the saran wrap and pop it in the freezer. And that kind of locks in that moisture for me, and then I can take it out and decorate it whenever I'm ready. Now I just move this back and forth gently through the cake, and it slides right through. And that gets the whole cake perfectly level. I'm going to take off that top part, and I'm going to put it in a Tupperware container and save it later for cake pops or whatever other project I wanted to do with it. And so here, this is still warm, so you want to be careful not to crack it, so you're going to move it gently when you put it on the saran wrap. I stick it right on the saran wrap. Make sure it's covered well. You can even give it several layers of the saran wrap if you don't have a Tupperware container to place it in. Just give it several layers of the saran wrap before putting it in the freezer. And I like to put it on a board so that it goes flat in the freezer, like a cake board or something. That way I know it's staying nice and flat when I put it in the freezer. So that's gonna go pop in the freezer for about an hour until it's about a refrigerator temperature for me to decorate. Or you can pop it in the freezer for a couple days and then put it in the fridge overnight, and then it's refrigerator temperature when you decorate. That's the temperature I like to decorate at, is refrigerator. And then you can fill it with all kinds of yummy filling, or just buttercream, or whatever you have on hand. Whatever your favorite preference is for filling your cakes. So you can fill it and stack it. If you want to check out how to fill and stack a cake, you can check out my tutorial on filling and stacking cakes, especially if you're doing a tiered cake and you have like 3-layer cakes and you want to give it a good support and then add the next tier. I have a whole tutorial on that, so please check it out. And thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that was helpful to you, and just know that this is only the beginning with your baking. There's all kinds of things you can do, and then from there, if you haven't decided to do from scratch and this is your comfort level, that's great, but scratch is fun too. So if this is just the way to get your feet wet, it is an excellent way to start.